One thing I appreciate about astrology and what I like about it is like um everything is cycles, everything is patterns, right? So when you start to understand that, it's like no transit is really too out of your ability to be aware of like what's going on, So it's like we're going through the same similar things, right? It's the same patterns, but how we respond to it determines how that will unravel in the current time, So there's always a moment or opportunity to change the trajectory of your life and what direction you actually want to go. But the thing about it is, as soon as you decide to do that, you have to also, you have to, I don't want to say brace yourself, because bracing to brace is not really necessarily the best way to go through different experiences. You have to kind of submit to the idea that what you're about to experience is brand new, and that it's this is where real confidence, things like self-esteem and self-value come from, going through these experiences and being open to what might come your way, and just the trust of the trust of, hey, no matter what happens, I'll be okay, right? I got my mind, and as long as you got your mind and you're putting some kind of intentional effort towards seeing your way through these different experiences, in the end, you'll be okay. Even though in the present moment, it might not feel like that, or before you go out and do something, it might feel like, again, the scariest, most terrifying thing to do. But that's a little bit about what we're going to get in today, because when we talk about this Mercury retrograde, the two words that come into my head is faith and fear, right? Faith is Sagittarius, right? Which that's where Mercury was heading towards and where it began its retrograde cycle. And now it's shifting back into Scorpio, which is the fear part, right? And that's not all about what Scorpio is about. However, Scorpio is the deep depths of what is kind of lying on the deeper psychological level. This is where shame and guilt and those darker emotions reside, obsession, against things like your sexual habits, or really not just sex, but the, desire aspect of life, what you truly desire, which might not always be acceptable in other people's eyes and stuff like that. Not to go too deep into that, because that starts to open the gates to a different conversation. But really, when we think about anything that we decide to do with the door closed, you know what I'm saying? So the privacy of your bedroom, or the privacy of going into the bathroom, right? Also just sacred spaces in general. What people don't realize is that that's really the energy behind Scorpio. It's not so much it can be taboo things, but it's really about sacred things, right? It's like high, low octave. High octave is sacred spaces. So even like how some people will say sex is a sacred act, right? Then there's some people who don't necessarily view sex in that way. Some people view sex as just something that they like to do, and that gets into the taboo category and things like that, right? And I'm not here to judge and nothing like that. That's just kind of how it goes down. Like a person who chooses to be a sex worker, um, they view that space in a very different way, and a lot of times, um, the thing about Scorpios get the label of being kind of like the kings and queens of that space. But the truth is, there's so much more to the Scorpio energy than that. That's one way it could kind of play out. But, a lot of that has to do with a person's interpretation of their own experiences and their decisions on how they would like to play out things, how they would go. Sometimes people feel as though they have no option outside of that world. Because, a lot of times, especially with people with heavy, prominent Scorpio energy, they go through the way they experience life, maybe even just the way they were brought up. A lot of times there's things that they manifest that is the reason why they feel the way they feel about certain things, that somebody who went through a completely different experience, they might not have interpreted the same way. Scorpio energy in a person's natal chart, it reveals to them, or it there's first of all, an innate drive to want to know the truth of things. And so that leads to you uncovering things maybe sooner than most people would say is appropriate for your age, right? So you might, again, you a person with a Scorpio sun, moon, ascendant, you might be born into a family that is already living a certain lifestyle, or you're in a situation where parents and older individuals around you are revealing things to you sooner than you are, or you the one who goes out and seeks these different things, not knowing that not understanding that this is like a drive within you, and then once you find what you're looking for, that's when it's like, oh damn, like now I can't unsee what I've seen. That's the curse, but also the gift of Scorpio, because as Scorpio continues to develop their ability to understand depth, um, both within themselves, and then within others, this is why your Scorpio friend is the first one you want to tell everything to, or how, as a Scorpio individual with Scorpio energy, you walk into a room and people immediately want to tell you their life story, right? Because they sense that you can handle it because of where you've been. They might not know exactly where you've been, but they get the sense that you've been around here for a while. So you're the first person they want to unload all that information to, right? Um, and then a little bit about Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is happening after the Scorpio energy. So as you go deep into the depths of your own desires and psychological wires that might be crossed, or if you've done the work to untie them, to untie the knots that might develop from living a life of truth seeking, or just being aware of spaces that other people don't normally go. What this ends up happening is, so the proper form of transmutation, and this is why if you are an individual with this Scorpio energy, you're always going to see a recommendation to find some kind of creative outlet or something that you can get that excess energy out, because we're dealing with Mars, but Mars is beneath the surface. So it's almost like creating little holes and pockets for that Mars energy to be able to flow, right? So that fixated water doesn't get too stuck, because that stuck water, frozen water, you get ice, right? Ice is so cold that it's hot. That's like Scorpio energy. People forget. Sometimes I even forget that Scorpio is a water sign, because some of the energy feels like a fire sign, right? But it's just like, think of the concept of something being so cold that it's hot. Um, so with all that fixated energy, very powerful, but one used in the wrong context, it can be destructive both to itself and the ones around it. That's the whole concept of even the Scorpio having the ability to sting others, but in stinging others, you sting yourself. So Scorpios will play that game of pushing things away, um, not understanding that they are hurting themselves in the process, or, like, for instance, Scorpio put you through a trial and tribulation. As soon as you try to get involved in any kind of situation with a Scorpio, they're gonna put you through the test. They're gonna do certain things in a way that make you go like, is this motherfucker testing me? Are they my friend or not? And all the Scorpio is doing is protecting themselves, because they understand at the end of the day, they need to know your darkness. So if you come around a Scorpio thinking you could be all love and light and kind of, hide those deeper parts of yourself, the Scorpio gonna get the with the pickaxe and start hacking away until it can see right through you. It already gets a sense, but it's trying to chip away all that bullshit that people usually put on as masks. This is why there's a ancient kind of feud between Scorpio and Leo energy, because Leo is the performer, and to a degree, we're all performing on this planet, but Scorpio, Scorpio. And so if you think about it too, like this is getting into like the esoteric aspect of understanding these energies. If you think about just life itself, the sun, how the sun shines, and it's kind of like the dominating force, quote unquote, of this earthly dimension, right? So the sun shines every day, and the sun shines over all things. And so you think about the aspects of the sun as it's personified into a different individual, right? Hopefully, I'm not, just follow along. I know this, new people who come here might not understand what I'm saying, but just follow along. try to unpack, right? So if you think about it, the sun rules Leo energy. So that's kind of why I'm saying down here, a lot of people will make the analogy that life is like a stage. And this is where people put on these masks to perform, right? Society wants you to look a certain way, right? Society wants you to act a certain way, being pleasant or politically correct are the things that kind of on the surface level of things get praised. And if a person isn't aware of who they truly are, they will confuse these masks that people put on for the mask they put on. They'll confuse it for themselves, and so they'll get themselves into situations that don't align with their truth, and this can create problems in different areas. And a lot of times, that's most of uh, everyone's problem, right? And then again, that gets into a different conversation about how this world works and things like that. But for back to what I was saying, so the sun rules Leo. So Leo energy understands, like a Leo sun, moon, and ascendant is going to understand how to be liked. Even if they're not liked, sometimes they get, it's more so attention. It knows what's getting attention, which can link to being liked. Or sometimes Leo will kind of be inverted and like not being liked. So they'll know that what they're doing is going to get on people's nerves, but they don't care. They just want the attention from it. But this innately pisses a Scorpio energy off because Scorpio wants the truth of things. A lot of times too, Scorpios are the ones, ironically, and if you a Scorpio, you might not agree with me, but a lot of times when I meet a Scorpio, I can immediately tell because they're so full of life and energy. You would think by how most astrologers talk about Scorpios, they're somewhere in the back and dressed in all black and brooding and stuff like that. But honestly, they might still be dressed in all black, but they are actually so much more vibrant and expressive than you might take them for, right? And I'm just giving you all the context of Scorpio energy, and I'm going to get to the Sag energy. Actually, right now, let's get into Sag. So Sag is when that Scorpio energy, after it's down in the depths, this is where it transmutes and transforms into what people would consider like the Phoenix, right? This is the enlightenment. So as deep as you go is as below as above. So as deep as you go, this allows you to, and see, this is the thing too, Scorpios have to learn. Every sign you can kind of understand the sign before you to understand where you came from and the sign where you're going, or the after you to understand where you're going. So all Scorpios have to get to a point where they learn or they teach themselves how to come up for air, right? And that's the expression of kind of what Sagittarius represents, which is the enlightening. So after you do all the heavy research and uncovering the truth, now it's time to experience, come up for air, allow that wisdom to play out through faith. A lot of times the Scorpio aspect of things, it is more fear than it is faith. It's more, and fear, don't get me wrong, it's not to say Scorpios are scared. No, a lot of times Scorpios are the ones willing to walk in the dark, right? Um, that's why they're the first person that you want to tell all your secrets to, because it's like they have the depth within them to be able to carry you, that you feel like they have the capacity to really understand, and that's unfair a lot of times to your Scorpio friends too. You should be considerate of what they might be going on, because a lot of times they play out that role of the person everybody come to, but when they need help, nobody there. So you have to be mindful of things like that too. That's just a side note, but and then also Scorpios, y'all have to just have those boundaries. Don't allow everybody to just dump their shit on you. Even though Scorpios, they know that they can handle it. So sometimes y'all feel like y'all obligated, but y'all really not. Even if you pretend like you don't care or you don't like people, that's not true. Scorpios are deeply empathetic in ways that most people can't understand. Um, that's why they get so frustrated or get so passionate about being treated unfairly, or when they see things that just they don't agree with, or when they see funny energy. Like they won't say nothing directly to you, but they'll see what you're doing that you think you getting away with, or you think, oh, it's so funny because it'd be like fake ass shit. And I'm going in right now because I'm a Scorpio rising, so I understand the frustration because it's like things people would never say to your face, or if they do say to your face, it's always a different tone. Because some people would be like, "I tell you that to your face anyway," da da da. But it don't be the same tone as when they be in different rooms talking to different people, or when they think that they can't be seen, or when they're protected behind distance, or not associating with the person, so they think that they can just get their shit off and it's all good, you know what I'm saying? Or when they feel fake justified to go in because everybody else is going in on the person. It's all kinds of ways that people be just showing their ass for real. And Scorpios be seeing all that. But anyway, I can tell Mercury in Scorpio just because I can't get to the next sign, Sag. But Sag is again another a sign that is about the expansion of things. And so this is actually after you've come out of the depths, you have all this wisdom to then express, and philosophy and morality too, right? Your morality is built by understanding the depths of yourself. That, like, that people don't realize that a lot of times. This is also why sometimes if a person gets too stuck into religion before they understand who they are, they remain kind of surface level, because if you've already adopted a morality or a spiritual system before you've gone to the depths and to understand yourself and the world around you, and this is not for everybody, right? People got to do things on their own level, but this is a lot of times why you'll see a religious person who is afraid of going deeper in certain things because they've already got comfortable with a spiritual system, which, when we talk about the ninth house spirituality, a lot of times people, you could either use this as this is like if you're into computers, or just like your iPhone, for real, right? Every iPhone, when you get an update, what's updating is the operating system, right? So I think of the ninth house like your operating system, or your lifestyle when it's manifested externally. So people choose different religions, and that's how they operate, right? So this is kind of like in the weekly astrology video when I was talking about how there's these templates, and the problem with them is not so much that I'm not into demonizing any group of people. If you believe what you believe, and there's truth in these different things, but you have to know you have to know what you're looking at, and have kind of like the awareness to be able to like take the truth, and just take the truth. This is why I call myself spiritual, or I do spirituality, because it's about developing your own connection with God in whatever capacity you want to. Some people find it in the Bible, some people find it in nature. Whatever that connection is, that's your right as a human being, right? As a spirit having a human experience. You can use anything. Some people, I mean, again, you do some research into like the different religions that people have made, and some people go too far, and they mix the wrong things to where they come up with something that's just complete stupidity. But again, that's your right as a spirit having a human experience, right? But when you pick a morality or a spiritual system without understanding the depths and truth of who you are, then you're just gonna kind of, you're going along with something that you're gonna come across certain experiences that might show you, hey, like this isn't compatible with how you're moving right now, your operating system. So you either need to update, or you ignore, you run away. And this is kind of like getting into understanding the kind of psychology behind the Sagittarius energy. Sag doesn't like to be confined. Sag is either going to expand or contract, right? That's what Jupiter does. The contraction is it running away from the things that feel like a cage. So this is why you'll even find as a Sagittarius, you either gonna find one that's a diehard religion based individual, or one that runs from religion, right? Um, it's no in between. And a lot of times, like, yeah, it's no in between. This is the preacher energy, right? But I kind of don't want to leave that point yet. Just talking about, morality, your spiritual system, adopting one before you truly understand the depths of who you are. Um, I just feel like that, well, Matter of fact, I kind of got that point off. But anyway, I just realized I didn't really even intro. What up, what up, what up? It's your boy Dave B. You're watching Beyond Astrology. This is where we do a deep dive into different topics regarding spirituality, astrology, of course, obviously. And we relate it to things like psychology, mental health, ways that you can empower yourself with the awareness of kind of the energies behind what's going on. We use astrology as a tool, right? Not as a doctrine of faith, you know what I'm saying? Not just something, not a doctrine of fate. That's the word I was meaning to use, right? Because at the end of the day, you choose your fate, right? You could call it free will if you want, but it's really about, it's not so much, what I'm talking about is not even so much free will, it's the freedom of choice, right? Everything is a choice. You're brought within certain circumstances in life, but everything is your choice to move in a direction. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times people are scared to make a choice, or they make choices that go against their truth, which is ultimately the real meaning of sinning. When you going against your truth or what's aligned for you, you are committing sin. And so you manifest from these situations or these choices, you manifest situations that feel like you are confined or cut off, or this is where the root or the seed, I'd say the seed of depression is planted. This is where the seed of kind of like any, in my opinion, uh facetious type energy kind of starts from. And the tricky thing about it is these things can be planted at a very early age. Most of the time they are. This is where your childhood trauma really comes from, because you were brought here, even though your parents might have been the vessels you traveled to get here, right? Even though that might be the case, um, yeah, even though that might be the case, um, my bad, I was looking at something. Even though that might be the case, you still are, um, you are not necessarily, you might have traveled through your parents. That might have been the vessel you was brought here through, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are that y'all from the same spiritual family. Like, you are your own individual, but a lot of times, uh, how people are raised. They're raised by people who already been experiencing life and have a predetermined idea of what they want their family to look like, or in the worst, worser case scenarios, they don't have an idea, don't have a plan, and they're truly not even prepared to raise you in a way that you know that's just healthy, you know what I'm saying? A lot of time, and that gets into a different conversation again, because it's like some, if again, people who have children and they're going through certain struggles, or they separate, that's the common thing, a lot of times, and those separations come from them not understanding pieces of themselves, and kind of, the cycle continues. This is how these generational curse have manifested over the years. But again, I like to always just stand on the fact that you are not a victim of these things. You, at the end of the day, might have been the recipient of some energy that might on the surface, like, just not good, and just threw you off, um created some damage. But if you are here today, you have the opportunity to, choose differently. And in choosing differently, you create different circumstances. You create different opportunities and stuff. So this is all about empowerment, right? But anyway, getting back to the actual topic of today's video, this is about the Mercury retrograde, right? So Mercury is the planet of how we think, communicate, how we analyze, interpret information. So when Mercury is in retrograde, basically all that means is that it appears, from our perspective, it appears to be moving backwards, but really it's sitting still. Like, everything is constantly moving, but it's slowing down to the point where everything is moving, you know, it slows down. And so it's like it just appears to be moving backwards, right? But it plays down here as um our minds hitting kind of like the rewind button or slowing down. I actually a lot of astrologers might throw up warning signs around the retrogrades. My ears perk up when we're experiencing retrogrades because like I get excited because it's a time to constantly remind yourself to slow down and pay attention, right? Slow down and pay attention. The thoughts that you receive a lot of times will reflect previous things that you were maybe contemplating, um, conversations you may have had. Some people relate it to actual physical people coming back. And that can happen, but more than likely it's mentalities. So old ways you used to think about something that you're doing now. And if you allow yourself to slow down and get quiet enough, you could see the resemblance. You could match the frequencies to understand, to just to analyze the information, right? How did like because if you think about it, right, if a past situation or mentality comes across, right, and you're in the present moment experiencing like, man, this reminds me of something. Some people just leave it at that. I would encourage, and this is what I do. I like to go to that mentality for a quick second and allow myself to kind of reminisce on what I was feeling or sensing around that time. And this is different for everybody, right? This is kind of like meditation. There's no one size fit all for this, but this is just the awareness practice, right? If you are finding yourself kind of just coming across things that remind you of other things, take a minute to analyze how you felt previously, and then think about where you are present. What's different? What changed? Do you still want to do those same things? Um, or are you realizing that what you may have committed to back then and agreed to isn't actually how you truly feel in the present? It's easier said than done, but and there's different ways that could even play out because it gets I don't want to make this too complicated, but that's simply what it is. It's old mentalities, mind states, even old feelings that might crop back up to show you whether or not um you're moving in a direction you want to or not. And the beautiful thing why I like retrogrades is because from that moment you can choose and decide how you want to continue on. Like, if you like what you're doing and the reference point you're seeing either growth or you're like, oh, I understand it now. Because a lot of times that'll happen through retrogrades as well. People will argue or not argue, but people will say like, during retrogrades there's so much confusion. But the irony is that the confusion is really by concentrating too hard on the present that you miss the patterns. Sometimes in the present moment, you're not considering how this pattern has already played out, right? And like what I've experienced is the more and more you kind of practice like the awareness of, oh, we're going through a retrograde, the more you can start to see kind of like honestly, you start to recognize patterns all the time. Like it just being learning more about astrology, you start to recognize the patterns. That's kind of what I was talking about in the very beginning of the video. You start to already be good at picking up patterns, right? Or to get better at it. And so when the retrogrades come, again, you see the pattern like from a mile away, and you're able to kind of like freeze frame, take the pattern, analyze it, and decide, you could break it down. Do you want to continue that pattern, or what, how do you want to modify it, or do you need to completely just get rid of it? Because again, like I said, Mercury, any planet going through retrograde is similar, but pertaining to what that planet's influence is. So in this case, Mercury is the planet of thinking, analyzing, communicating. So in the present moment, by going too fast, you're going to make those mistakes. You're going to overlook certain details. You're going to miscommunicate, misinterpret, false diagnose based on a poor analysis of a certain situation. All of these different things are very possible and could cause you to stumble in the present moment, right? But so it's basically a big old warning sign to say slow down. Now, the signs, let's get into the signs and how those influence the retrograde as a whole. This one in particular, right, is dealing with Scorpio and Sag. So we were moving into Scorpio, right? Now Mercury and Sagittarius already doesn't really, this is 180 degrees from where Mercury was birthed at. right? Which is Gemini. Gemini is the fast communicator, right? It's the thinkers of the zodiac, right? This is kind of like but it's quick thoughts, quick thoughts, wittiness. Um and a lot of times you can see the correlations between two energies because a lot of the wittiness that Gemini might express, you'll see the same or similar things, maybe just expressed in a different way in Sagittarius, right? And so every opposite sign kind of has a connection. But um, so Mercury, when it's in Sag, it struggles with thinking, overthinking an experience. Sag energy likes to just get in and do it, learn by doing. Geminis like to get all the information first and then figure out the best kind of way to do it based upon their breakdown, their analysis, right? Um, Sagittarius is also, again, through all it's like the faith aspect, right? Because like I said before, the two words that are coming to my mind are faith and fear. So when Mercury was moving in Sagittarius, the problem is we might have been very excited about what we were learning or what we were hearing or interpreting, maybe analyzing, maybe we were communicating with that same excitement, right? So one thing about Sagittarius too, it expands, it's Jupiterian. So a lot of times it's elaborate language. You might be excited about something that you actually genuinely want to do. And so you put all this energy into communicating it. So you get others involved, other people's minds, you get your mind invested. And so before you know it, you've got all this energy wound up and it becomes larger than life, right? So when the retrograde hit, boom, you start to understand like the retrograde made you want to overcommit to some of these grand ideas, these bigger pictures, right? But you got to understand, and this is the relationship between the Jupiter and Mercury. Within the big picture, a big picture is made up of those tiny little details, right? If you see a painting, like the most prolific painting started with one stroke at a time. You feel me? So in the big picture, you might have lost track of those little minor details that are meant to work together to create a larger representation of what you're experiencing or what you're about to experience, right? What you're getting into. So overcommitting, over stating, maybe overconfidence in your direction and what you're doing. All of these different things might have actually, might have led you down a path. And before you know it, boom, now Mercury going into Scorpio, back retrograding back into Scorpio, the fear is creeping up, right? And that fear is ultimately what kind of starts to create the uncertainty is creeping up, the uncertainty, self-doubt, because see, Mercury in Scorpio is a different conversation. This is taking Mercury and submerging it in water, right? Where it starts to get dark. I was gonna say dirty. It starts to get dark. It can get dirty though, because of depending on how murky that water is. So if you're an individual, and this is where everything is levels, because depending on who you are as an individual, there might be a lot of things beneath the surface that you haven't even uncovered or you haven't even prepared yourself for. So when Mercury goes into Scorpio, now your mind is looking at these shadows, not understanding what's in the dark. And if you're a person who's scared of the dark, right? Um, and this is what I was trying to get at when I was talking about people who choose morality or spiritual system before they understand the depths of themselves. These are to be the same people that be like, "Oh, I'm God fearing," and just my opinion, man. Like, I don't think that's a proper way to interpret it. Like, I understand what people mean when they say that, but I don't like that. I don't like that ideology because, um, I think that's I don't know if I want to go that deep about it in this video, but I'll just say that to me, that's like a way of like that's being scared of life. Like you being God fearing is like you being scared of yourself, in my opinion, right? And I could go deep on that in a separate video, but in all reality, I think that that's the wrong way to look at your relationship with God. Like, what I'm saying, God created you its image, like it's all possibility. God is all possibilities. So to be God fearing, this is you afraid of all possibilities. You only want to be set on what you comfortable with, and that puts you in a box. But I get it. That box feels safe. But truth, it's like you have to be willing to expand. Like the true essence of what God even represents is the ability to expand, to be aware of more. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, it goes against the whole idea of having faith. The faith is not fearing the unknown. So if you're God fearing, how is you also having faith of the unknown? Like to me, it's just it's a lot of things you'll start to realize. But that's the problem with these templates. These templates they serve a purpose. And by templates, I mean worldviews. So these religions are worldviews, you know what I'm saying? Or even politics is the worldview. And they just give you this box. If you're too comfortable with the template, you're never going to see anything outside the box. In fact, you're going to start to demonize and try to attack others who are dancing outside of that small box that you're in. You know what I'm saying? And you're gonna think they the problem. And then that turns into you wanting to harm them, or it can get as deep as when you understand these different wars going on and stuff like that, why war even exists. you know every war is based upon two people's worldviews conflicting, and then them fighting over space. So, what I'm saying, you can kind of follow the breadcrumbs and be like, oh, okay, this is a strategy, divide and conquer. You know what I'm saying? Again, like I was saying, I think in the weekly astrology video, the people are the power. But the more you are able to keep the people separated, the more you decentralize any alternative power to the power that be that it's in place right now. The ruling, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, so that fear. So right now with the Mercury retrograde, we're experiencing this, but or you may be experiencing this on a smaller, more interpersonal scale. Right now, you could look at whatever house you have, Scorpio and Sag in. Like for instance, if this is between it can get kind of complicated because sometimes like you might have these in the same house, right? So depending on, matter of fact, comment below what house that you have this in, and maybe I'll go through the comments and put a little, excerpt, little quick interpretation on the houses that you have Scorpio and Sag in. But basically, this is going to be kind of a teeter-tottering, right? So if this is happening around the first house space, let's just for the sake of this conversation, first house and second house, right? Let's say in your first house is Scorpio and your second house is Sag. So as Sagittarius as the Mercury was moving into the second house, right? Or matter of fact, let's start from the top, right? 12th and first. So Mercury was moving from the 12th into the first. You got Sag in the first. So Mercury was creeping up into the first. So this is Mercury starting to enlighten or expand on the idea of a new persona, a new personality, right? So you started off with all this faith in that expansion and in that expression. The retrograde, though, started to bring up old things, probably personal experiences, personal insecurities brought back up that made you revert back into now Mercury is in Scorpio, right? So in the 12th house, now you have all of this fear, right? This emotional fear from what you can't see. 12th house is all about that the mysticism space. It's the spiritual space. It's the other end of Sagittarius, right? So again, the lesson in this is faith or fear. Are you going to go with the fear of your the imaginations that are, because see the 12th house is also, it's like the Pisces houses. So this is imaginations, this is delusions. Are you going to let the fear coming from these delusions that are standing right in front of your expansion, are you going to let these things put you back into a cage, or make you less courageous about how are you going to allow these delusions to destroy your faith in your new persona, your new personality, your new life? Or are you going to choose the faith over the fear, right? No, like in address and face, because a lot of times with this energy to me is about facing those fears. It's about confronting them and being willing. Again, you got to think Mars is Scorpio is ruled by Mars. You got to be willing to fight and transmute. So if it's fear that's coming up, fear is not the truth. Fear is just a projection of what you think is around the corner. A shadow is just a shadow has no real dominance over, you know what I'm saying? To be scared of the shadows is like, that's silly, right? Because a shadow is just a form that's coming from what you're emitting or I'm not going to get into y'all know what a shadow is. It's light bouncing and creating a figure, you know what I'm saying? So if you allow your delusions to make that figure larger than life, and in real life, a shadow can't hurt you, right? But it can hurt you because it can make you scared, and that fear will influence you to do other things that are destructive. So you go against yourself being too scared. So that's the 12th house in the first house, right? Let's say you have Sag in the that was Sag in the first house, right? Sag in the first house, Scorpio in the 12th. Now let's say you have Sag in the second house and you have Scorpio in the first. So this was Mercury making its way into the second house. So you started to have a lot of faith in maybe what you value, right? Second house is all about values. It's all about your talents and gifts, right? So these are things that develop your self-esteem. So you started to expand on your self-esteem, started to see the value in maybe what you had to offer to the world, or something that you was trying to work on, or something like that, your stability even, right? Even money situations. You might have started to have a little bit more faith on how you was going to make this thing pop or make that thing be a new business. Now that Mercury has crept back into the first house for you, this is all kinds of retrograde energy regarding and fear regarding your personal insecurities. So you started to develop a plan on how you was going to create stability for yourself, but now you having second guessing because you like, damn, like all those personal insecurities you have. Damn, am I really cut out to do this? Who am I to earn money for putting content out on the internet? Who am I to do all these cool things that I want to, say you start to question and create these kind of these loops of self-doubt, right? And that right there will be the choice you have of faith or fear. Are you going to have faith that you are who you are, you that person? So if who you not to go out and put that to the world so that you can start to build some kind of stability? Like, come on now, have faith in that, right? Let's have more faith in, let's lean towards the faith, right? Or are you going to let the fear of your personal you don't want to put content out on the internet to start your business because you're afraid of all the personal people in your life and how they might be affected? Come on now, fuck that. Now, next, let's say you have Sagittarius in the second house, no, Sagittarius in the third house, Scorpio in the second, right? So, um, Mercury was making its way creeping into the third house, right? For you, Sagittarius. Now, Mercury itself likes to be in the third house. So let's say you started to uh mix and mingle in your surroundings, right? So you started to kind of start to communicate your ideas more, you having more faith. And so this is a little tricky because this is an energy where this is like pretty much for my Libra risings, I think, right? Where everything in your house, your houses are opposite, the signs are opposite in opposite places. So this could play out like kind of in that kind of way where you maybe over communicated or got, you over exaggerated something that you were expressing or communicating about, right? You might have blew it up bigger than you could maybe back it up. And so this leads to complications in a different kind of way, right? Or you just started to feel more confident in what you wanted to communicate, what you wanted to um, involve yourself into. So, because again, it's not all bad. Like this energy doesn't necessarily like having signs in opposite houses and stuff is not a determinant factor of whether or not you're going to have a good or bad experience, right? Astrology is a tool, not fate. That's what I mean, so it doesn't mean, oh, I'm just going to always be backwards in life. However, you will run into situations where it's like, damn, okay, I got to be careful about how I'm communicating. But anyway, in this case, you was starting to expand on how you was communicating, or maybe just expand on how you was choosing to interact with the people, places, and things in your surroundings, right? So as Mercury went back into Scorpio, now it's like you're starting to get fear around your self-esteem. You're like, damn, do I really belong in these new social circles? Should I continue to communicate and build these relationships, or should I just let the fear of not feeling like I'm enough, or not feeling like I'm worth it? Should I just let that be the end all be all, and hide all of my gifts and talents, and not offer these things to the world? Maybe I want to keep these things secret. And again, that's not I wouldn't advise that. I would advise having more faith in saying, okay, if this is how I want my surround, because you got to think the third house is your surroundings. So this could be your physical neighborhood, or this could be the thoughts on your mind, because these are the first neighbors that we have, is our thoughts and feelings. So you have to understand that, no, this is a time you need to more put more effort into transmuting the fear you have of your self-esteem, transmute that into the faith you have about the faith you have in the new ideas that you want to have in your surroundings, or the new way that you're choosing to communicate around people on an external, or even talk to yourself. A lot of times that third house energy is even how you talk to yourself. So you want to have more faith in that. You want to have more expansion into the brighter side of, like, okay, let me, even though I'm afraid, I don't know if I have what it takes to be whatever I want to be, or I don't know if I have you're struggling with the self-esteem aspect, but you need to make the decision that you're going to be a little bit more optimistic about that. And but there might be lessons on that show you why you might not have been optimistic about it before, right? um I'm gonna put a disclaimer at the end too. Should have put this, I should have said this a little bit earlier, but yeah. And basically all it is that what you want to do is just make sure that you are um well, I kind of did say that because it's cycles and patterns, right? So I don't want to say to be overly optimistic, but this is like, you might want to just take a deeper consideration into what you're involving yourself into, how you're communicating, take a deeper consideration into that. Let's say you have Sag in the fourth house, Scorpio in the third. So you was moving along with the Mercury into the fourth house. So this is you maybe starting to communicate more about your family life, or to your family, right? Expanding your family, or wanting to uh have more, just your family situations are on your mind. So maybe thinking about expanding your family, or learning or teaching your family, right? Or lessons from family domestic issues, or just private life, what I'm saying? Private learning. So you might have started to see something that you wanted to learn in private. So you started to expand that, or just your belief system, right? It could be that too. So the faith in there is, it's almost like, oh, matter of fact, it's kind of like you started to have more faith on how you wanted to expand, maybe outside of your comfort zone, or something to that degree. And then Mercury going back into Scorpio, you started to maybe get ideas about wanting to stay within the confines of what you're familiar with, right? Familiarity. So the fear is keeping you stuck into the familiarity, whereas the faith is saying, hey, you might want to expand your comfort zone. You might want to, and expanding your comfort zone means speaking up more about how you feel, or speaking more directly about the things on your heart and things like that. So again, faith and fear, you got a choice. It's up to you, which one you want to do. And again, the fear, I know I'm speaking of it as if it's negative, but the fear could be the very same thing that's keeping you from doing something that you truly didn't want to do in the first place. Because one thing about the Scorpio energy, the deep resonance, it's like deep resonance is supposed to be deep resonance. So if something is not right with you, not sitting right with you emotionally, then that's that trigger to kind of be like, okay, hold on, let me remix this so that I can make sure I'm doing what I'm actually wanting to do. Um, Fifth house. So say you have Sag in the fifth, Scorpio in the fourth. So as Mercury was making his way into the fifth house of expression, you having more faith in the way you express yourself, more faith in how you want to be seen, and how you want to present yourself to the world, right? And have being the center of attention, right? You was opening yourself up to that, trying to expand even what entertains you, right? Maybe adding something else to it. But Mercury creeping back in the Sagittarius, I mean, back in the Scorpio, that's the fourth house. So this is a lot of fear though around your comfort zone again. Like so fear about the comfort zone. You thinking like, you know what, I want to express myself and be seen for this, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid of again, it could be all kinds of insecurities. That's the fourth house as well, insecurities. Um, where personal insecurities is like the first house, the fourth house is like deep emotional, maybe even childhood traumas that turned into insecurities over time. So this is like deep child wounds, or like maybe even, so the whole thing is don't be too afraid to dive deeper into understanding why you feel the way you feel and start to attack those things, start to rearrange those things, transmute those things so that you can have that full magnitude of faith and energy into the new way you want to express yourself, right? The new things you want to see on the stage, the new things you want to pay attention to, because it might be things that you trying to pay attention to about yourself or the things around you that you can't do because you're too concerned about what you're scared about, or that fear is keeping you kind of in behind closed. It's keeping you wanting to be overly private to the point where you're not letting nobody in. And so that's creating different issues on that end, right? Which I understand though, because if you a Scorpio in the fourth house, it gets deep and you do need to be mindful of who you letting in, but you deserve to be happy as well. So this is uncovering some of those more deeper childhood wounds and things like that. Now, let's say you have Sag in the sixth house. So this is Mercury creeping into the space of work routine, you expanding how you want to maybe go about your routine. You wanting to do something different. So you trying to switch your routine up. And depending on the reason behind why you want to do it, that'd be positive or negative, right? This is a square to this is the Virgo house. So, you might be trying something different, experimenting with how you want to do your routines or switching jobs, which might be risky right now, right? So the Scorpio being in the fifth house, Mercury going back in the fifth house, you might start to notice like, okay, how you was trying to express yourself at that job might not have coincided. Like you might have realized like, oh, the way I was expressing myself might have rubbed people at that job the wrong way, right? Or because it's fear around your expression, it's fear around your entertainment and maybe even what you like and want to express or experience on that level. Like you might be unsatisfied with your lifestyle at the moment, right? And you trying to find a new way. So this is kind of like trying to bring you back to say, hey, let's rethink how we express ourselves and make sure we do it in a way to get what we want. You might have to go on that job and ask for a raise if it's just a money issue, or you might have to adjust your hours so you can have more time to do the things that you want to do and you could reorganize your schedule appropriately, So this is the faith to express what it is you deeply want, or fear of not, the fear of expression to the point where you close your mouth and now you can't create your new routine, the routine that you want, or you can't get that job you really want, or that raise you might want, or you feel like you might need that will really contribute or benefit your lifestyle. You're too afraid to ask for what you want. You're too afraid to express what you want and go for it. It could even be you might be cool with your full-time job, but you trying to get on this content creating stuff. You trying to express your art. You trying to be an artist or entrepreneur, and you need to take the time to start to express yourself in a way like you really want to own a business or you really want to do whatever it is you want to do, right? I'm just using that as an example because that's what I be doing, you know what I'm saying? So, or what I see, the world I'm in, the artist, entrepreneur, content creator world, So, and then these things that we have to do in life to earn a living, right? Or to build a living, right? We should change that from trying to make a living to building a lifestyle or whatever it might be. But anyway, that's kind of the difference between wealth and just having money. A lot of people want to get money, but they're not trying to build wealth. Um, Side note. But anyway, that's basically what you're dealing with, right? Now let's say you have Sag in the seventh house. So this is Mercury creeping up into the seventh house of relationships. So trying to expand the way you relate communicating more, wanting to learn more about your relationship style maybe, or the things that you're relating to, saying so you're trying to have a little bit more faith in either putting you might be in a space where you're trying to put yourself out there, right? You're trying to actually have more relationships, so or a deep, maybe you're trying to just experiment and see what's going on. So, or if you're in a relationship, this is you expanding that. So, I mean, it could go multitude of different ways. Some people might be going through a breakup or trying to, they're realizing their expansion is calling for them to separate from their partner, or the vice versa. They're expanding and their relationship is actually getting more robust. They're learning more things about their partner and they're liking it. So, the exchange is there, so depending on where you at, what you experiencing, it might be the case, but it's just it is communication and focus around that space, right? How you relate and what's relating to you, and also maybe even the exchange of values between you and whatever you're interacting with. But Scorpio would be in a sixth. So this is creeping back into the space of work routine health. Um, also, yeah. Also, real quick, back to the fifth house, or the Sag and the sixth. Sag and the sixth could also be you trying to change up your health, or something that helps with that lifestyle. But it could be the things that you are entertained by that are kind of deteriorating your health. So this is kind of that conversation too. But anyway, going back to the seventh house of Sag, like you also might be trying to expand to create more balance, right? Or experiencing imbalance because of something you don't quite know about yet, right? So you're trying to learn something new. Now, the Mercury going into Scorpio is routines, patterns, right? So Scorpio is the fear. The fear might be having you clinging to an old pattern. So this could be emotional. This could be something you're doing with your time, the way you're going about a certain situation. You might be hypercritical about something, whether it be yourself or it could be about the new things that you're trying to relate to. So the fear is going to have you clinging to the old way you used to feel about it, or, just wanting to do the safe thing. So try to, again, faith or fear. It's the learning of, oh well, if I want to grow and expand, I'm gonna have to let go of all that old stuff that I'm clinging to. That's just what it's got to be. So keep that in mind moving forward. So you want to lean towards the faith of saying, okay, if I want to enhance my relationship, if I want to deepen my relationship with myself, then I'm gonna have to be willing to transmute, let go, sacrifice those old routines that might make me feel comfortable on the surface, but are truly not connected to what I want to experience. They're holding me back. So, even down to anything that is creating comfort. I don't want to just say a job. Um, you know, yeah. But anyway, going to the next one. So Sag in but it's anything related to a routine pattern that you do every day. You have to really ask yourself, do I resonate with these things, or are any of these things blocking my ability to relate better to others or to myself? Let's say you have Sag in the eighth house. So this is Mercury making its way into the eighth house of, like I was talking about before, sacred space, or um what deeply resonates. This is you expanding, so learning more about the things in your subconscious, learning and expanding more on your depth, or what it is that you are. Maybe it could be your traumas. It could be just anything on a deep psychological level. Um, Things that you consider sacred, right? So your sacred practices and things like that could even be habits and stuff. You're trying to expand that. So this is faith in what you're deeply passionate about, faith in wanting to expand that space. Um, when it comes to Mercury retrograding back into Scorpio, that's going to look like your seventh house. So it could be fear of maybe. So this could kind of be, you're afraid to maybe deepen the relationship you have with something, whether it be yourself or something outside of you, right? So a person, place, a thing outside of you. So the Scorpio might creep up and have fears around being too vulnerable in that space, right? where Mercury is trying to teach you to have faith and open up to be more vulnerable because you'll get more depth out of life. The more vulnerable you are, and this is not to say be naive and put yourself in compromising situations, but this is saying, hey, the more vulnerable you're able to be with yourself, the more you can open those doors with others and have deeper connections, deeper relationships, deeper conversations and things, deeper understanding of one another. And that will lead to more fulfilling experiences with each other, right? These different aspects all contribute to, that kind of space. Um, that's kind of where the faith and fear is, right? But you might be too afraid to be vulnerable in that old retrograde energy kind of keeping you held back and not allowing you to expand properly into being more deep and all those different things. These are things people really be struggling with. A lot of this stuff sounds easier said, but it's easier said than done. But you got to do it regardless at some point. But just that faith versus fear in that aspect as well. The next space would be Sag in the ninth house. So this is Sag going to where it likes to be, but Mercury going there, Mercury doesn't like to be in the ninth house. However, during a retrograde, sometimes you can kind of get a little bit of it's a balancing of energy, right? A little bit because it slows down enough for Mercury to do what it needs to do in Sag, whereas normally Sag will be moving too fast for Mercury or moving in a way that doesn't coincide with the energy. Now, with the ninth house, this is learning and actually having faith in the different things you want to experience, right? Um, Going for it. Mercury in the eighth house. Now, this is Mercury going backwards. So Mercury might start to have the fear of the unknown or fear of its own depths, not knowing how to handle those depths or not knowing how to, go about it. So this is kind of like, this is for the Aries rising. So that would be a situation where you kind of gotta decide for yourself, like, um, this next step, this next stage of life, are you going to have courage about it or are you going to be allowing, um, see, Scorpio or Mercury in the eighth house, this could have your mind on just the wrong things, right? You could be so fixated on just sometimes like you think of the eighth house sometimes will make you wanna, it's always around vulnerability, right? It's always around vulnerability. So it's like whether or not you're willing to give yourself the I guess permission to, get what you want. To get what you want, you're gonna have to put yourself out there. You're gonna have to expand outside of your own habits, your own, those secret things you do that develop shame. Like you have to work those things out. And the fear might make you just comfortable with staying behind closed doors when there's a lot more things that you want to experience. However, you have to have the faith to expand into those things, to learn more about those things and why you do what you do. So this could be a very psychological time, like something that you need to rewire in your mind so that you can have a better lifestyle or the lifestyle that you want, right? Sagittarius in the 10th house. So Mercury moving into the 10th. This is you trying to expand your business or what you are known for, broadcast, your status. You trying to expand that, right? However, going back into Scorpio, you might have some fear around putting the effort towards going out and experiencing things for yourself, right? So you overthinking every experience or you're afraid to go deeply into these experiences. So you're lacking the true wisdom and knowledge to spread and broadcast on a grand scale, right? You have to do the work. So this is kind of like that kind of message. Like, dude, you have to do the deep dive into what it is you're learning about. You can't just, and then again, this is Mercury retrograde. So this is old ways that you might have been dealing with uh this space, always the old and from old philosophy, old things that you clinging too tightly on and you need to transform so that you can open yourself up to new information, new knowledge, new wisdom, right? So don't cage yourself into previous knowledge and don't allow because this is also experiences and stuff like that. So you have to allow yourself to expand outside of those experiences as well. You know what I'm saying? Now, let's go into what you call it. Let's go into having Sag into the 11th house. Sag in the 11th. This is you. Um, Mercury going into the 11th. This is you trying to expand on your network and things of that nature, right? You're trying to expand your network, get connected with different people, right? Different associations, both externally, but also internally too, making different associations with the different thoughts and feelings in your mind so you can create new bridges and pathways to express new things. But Mercury is in the 10th. So, or Mercury retrograding into the 10th of Scorpio. um, this is you clinging onto an old status. Maybe an old status is holding you back. So what you used to be known for won't allow you to expand into new networks, right? Or the fear of the what you used to be known for is keeping you from putting in the effort to expand. So this is the faith of fear. You have to choose to push forward, even if it seemed like you might not be accepted into these new spaces. You have to relentlessly continue to be yourself. And if you feel as though you've changed and transformed, then hey, so stand on that. You know what I'm saying? And don't be so afraid of what might look like on the surface that you can't let that stop you. But that's the thing. It's up to you. Only you can make that difference. But it starts with the awareness of, okay, um, these old things that I might have built up as a status, you might have to fight to get through that. And then last but not least, Sag in the 12th house. This is you, Mercury moving into the 12th, which it really don't like to be in. You really probably like, what is going on? But this is you trying to expand into new dreams or new imaginations, right? It could be new delusions as well. So you thinking about a dream you want to achieve. And so you caught up in the illusion of it, right? But what you really need to understand, Mercury going retrograde into the 11th house, and for you, that's Scorpio there, that you need to understand how to transmute. First of all, it's old associations that might be creating self-doubt in that a dream and imagination and that creative endeavor you want to do. So you need to transmute and fight through those old associations so you can get connected with the proper people who can support that imagination, or um create the right associations within your mind to make that dream make sense. Hopefully you're not just clinging on to a delusion. Um, it could get tricky for you, and with that energy in the 12th house. So just be aware of that. Try not to get too caught up in what you think is real. But yeah. So that's all through the signs, but or through the houses, right? But one thing, last thing I want to say in this is, understand, like with Mercury retrograde, again, the principles of it is to transmute, transform. So, again, faith and fear, sometimes the fear, there do be gems in it, and that's the thing about any emotions. You want to make sure that you are allowing yourself to really process and dissect the energy from what, or the information from what you feel. And it's retrograde, so these are old feelings, old ways of thinking, so you have to really take the time to dissect that, and then those are going to give you insights on what you need to do now. If you want to do more of that, you do more of that. If you say like, oh, that's not the direction I want to go, you switch up, right? But at the end of the day, understand the two main things you just got to keep in mind is Scorpio is triggering, or it's it's meant to push you to pay attention to what you deeply want and resonate with, who you truly are, right? Sagittarius is having the faith to pursue that. So this is the decision. The decision lies in between that space of what you truly want and the faith that you have to achieve that. Make that connection. But all the fear that comes up are just old things that might, and a lot of those, and again, like I said, I'm not saying to avoid it, because what you want to do is you want to pay attention so that you can learn from your previous mistakes and apply the new wisdom to where you're going now, right? So that when all of this energy goes direct, you're gonna have everything you need to go where you supposed to go. and you won't have to keep you won't create you won't put yourself in a situation where you're looking like, damn, what did I manifest? What did I do? Why am I in this situation? This will be you'll feel more aligned, like, okay, no, this is exactly what I wanted to do. These are my intentions. And again, things don't really play out exactly how you see them, but it'll be enough of it for you to be like, okay, yeah, this hopefully you're blessed in that way where you receive something greater than what you could have imagined, right? That's like being blessed. Um, but you can only get there if you're willing to take the step in that direction. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully this was helpful. This is a much longer video than I had intended. However, that's how this thing usually goes. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the new channel, Beyond Astrology. Yeah, just try to make sure I provide value to y'all in all the ways that I possibly can. In the description box below will be my information if you want to get a personalized reading or anything like that. We could chop it up. Send me an email at davebeyond95@gmail.com. What else? What else? What else? Yeah. So I think that's the main thing, and we're gonna come right back and break down this new moon in the late degrees of Scorpio real soon. So much love. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.